Hello, my name is Mike, and this is, well, part of a bike. My videos intros are getting a little bit redundant here lately, aren't they? You know, we keep talking about the same thing. Well, we've been talking about that transmission upgrade that was so important to the early Victory bikes. I keep saying we. Who's this we? It's just me. Last time I checked, I'm the only one in the garage. Anyway, I was talking about the transmission upgrade, and we went through this entire transmission, and one of the things that I kept touching upon in the last several videos and some of my other videos back when was this whole speed sensor topic. On the early bikes from 98 to I think about 2002, they had a speed sensor that was mounted up in the top, up in this area here. It's held down by a bolt. But when you do that upgrade, when they change the gears out, then the speed sensor gets relocated to a bracket that's completely obsolete back here so it can count the teeth of the drive pulley. Now, what the instructions call out for is a, it's a 40107666 sensor, which is no longer available. It has been superseded, and it's still available from Victory, from, you know, a Victory dealership or Polaris dealership. It is now a 4011111, and it's $159. And you're going to say, $159? And that's what I said too. So that's a lot of money. So what I found was another sensor that's absolutely identical, electrically speaking, is also available through Polaris. This is a 4011640. And this particular one, well, you can get them on eBay for $15 to $17. Big difference, right? The only thing that's different about this one is the connector on the end. I've mentioned that before. The wire harness on the bike itself has a female end, not a male end like this. So in order for us to be able to use our speed multiplier, we've got to change the connector, because if you try to plug this one in, it won't work. You got to change the connector. You got to use the speed multiplier. So by simply getting the $15 part, splurging another $6 on a WeatherPack connector, also available on eBay, you can convert these two components into one of these $159. $21, $159. Pretty good trade if you ask me, but you got to spend a little time and swap the terminals and all that. So that's what today's episode is going to be about. I'm just going to walk you through that connector change. Pretty easy, so stick around.
Somewhere in a dusty, dirty back alley in western Arizona, not far from historic Route 66, is an old fart trying to cram a square peg into a round hole. He'll work on anything, just as long as it's got at least 2 cool wheels.
So, here is one of the sensors that we need to modify. This is one of the older part numbers. This is a 4010766, which was then superseded by the 4011111. But it's essentially the same sensor. It's just that the 4011111 has an even longer harness. And as you can see, it is, well, noticeably longer, stop it, than the one we actually need. So our first step is to be, well, it's got the wrong connector, it's too long, we're going to cut the harness. Now, to play it on the safe side, we probably want it to be a little bit too long, but just kind of remember that when this is installed on the bike, it's going to plug in to the the speed multiplier, which is going to be like right here. It's going to be in the bracket underneath the right side cover. So it doesn't have to be very long to reach the connector on the speed multiplier. I like to give it an extra inch or two just to make sure it reaches. And also, if you make a mistake when you're doing your terminals here, which can happen, it gives you room to do it again. So we're going to, there's a measuring device. You get an idea what we're talking about. So overall length on the stock one is just about, from the tip of the sensor to the end of the plug is 10 inches, something like that. So we're going to take a little bit off of this one. I figure if we cut it like right here, it still gives us plenty of room. And by the way, these are magnetic, so everything sticks to them. Gets a little annoying after a while. So we're going to give it a snip right about there. And we're going to dispose of this. That's our first step. That's a toughie, I know. But there we go. I don't need that. Now, you've got 3 conductors in here, and you've got a jacket, an outer jacket. And in order to remove that outer jacket, well, unless you've got a special fancy tool that I'm not aware of, you've got to take a razor blade and very carefully score around it without cutting into the wires themselves or their insulation. You guys can kind of get a little close up here on that. You see what I'm talking about there. Oh, did I not bring a razor blade? I did not bring a razor blade with me. Wait a minute. Here we go. My little in here. So, now, in order to remove the insulation, you want to give yourself enough room for, you got to have a little room to manipulate the wires, and you've got to have, of course, enough to strip to put the connector. So I give it a good 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches. That's about 1.5 inches there. When you go to score this, or when you go to strip this, you only need to score it. You don't have to go all the way through to reach those conductors. So, and even though I wear glasses, I still don't see as well as I would like to, but basically you just want to put a little score in it all the way around. And if it's not deep enough, you can do it again. Here's how you can tell if it's deep enough. When you fold it over, you should be able to see that score, and it should start to separate a little bit. And this one isn't, so where'd my razor blade go? Oh, stuck to the magnet. I don't know if you guys, there's a little line there. There's not, you can't see it too good. And you just gently go over it a little bit at a time. You don't want to dig in too harsh, otherwise you could contact the conductors underneath. And you can see as I'm folding it, it is separating. So it's a combination of folding it and then just gently going along that same line. And what will happen is eventually it'll separate to the point where you'll see the insulation of one of those 3 conductors. So you can see the white conductor starting to show there. I don't know how well. I don't know which one of these cameras is the best to show you with, but okay. And then you would continue to do that all the way around the diameter of the conductor, or around the diameter of this outer jacket. Okay. Move over a little bit. Bend it over some. And eventually, it'll actually break before you cut through it. And that's the goal. There we go. I got a little bit of red conductor there. I don't know if you guys can try a different camera angle here. See a little bit of red conductor showing. And that's what you want. You don't want to cut into the red. You just want to score it enough that when you fold it, it breaks open at the red. And that way you don't damage the insulation of the individual conductors. Takes a little finesse. You can't get all butchery and brutal with it. I like being butchery and brutal with some things, but this is not one of them. Okay, score it. Gently scoring. Come on now, separate. And there's my black conductor. Once you see all 3 conductors, you can usually get it to break the rest of the way without any further scoring. So I got a red conductor, a black conductor. There's a little strand between the conductors. You can get in there with the tip and just kind of work it a little. Something like that. But eventually, you should be able to, make a liar out of me now, you should be able to get them to completely separate. And then once it does, like that, you can just pull it right off. And then you have your individual strands, each of which we will also strip. So we're going to strip these wires down. They're very small conductors. They're extremely tiny. There's a couple different tools I use. I've got one that's really good for small stuff like this, which I did not bring. I brought my kind of universal ones. These are okay. They're not the best. It goes down to 22 gauge, it says. They'll work. And we really only need maybe 1/4 of an inch of conductor. So we'll take it down to, oops, wrong one. Go to the next one down. Smallest size on this one, I think. Okay. You want to be careful. Once again, you don't want to dig in too hard because you don't want to cut any of the individual strands of the conductor. You only want to remove the insulation. So, again, a little finesse. Gently cut it, rotate it around so the blades have a chance to dig in. Now, before I go too much further, I have to make an admission. I messed up. I ordered the wrong, I ordered the wrong connector kit. I ordered the one without the terminals. Well, we need the terminals. We got to connect the conductors to something, don't we? So what I got in was just a hard shell and a retainer. And the hard shell and the retainer, well, it don't do me any goodness. I've got terminals. I've got a few other terminals. This is what they're supposed to look like. This is, I'll try to include some pictures of close-ups of it. But this is what we're going to connect the wire to. And when you go to connect the wire, part of it crimps to the wire, and that's where you see the multiple small little fingers here. And then part of it is going to crimp onto the insulation. And it's not just going to crimp onto the insulation, it's also going to crimp onto one of these weather seals that goes around the insulation, so that when it's assembled into this connector, any moisture or rain that hits it isn't going to be able to get into those terminals and cause corrosion. So that's why they call them weather packs. When these connectors are connected and they're snapped shut, they're actually liquid tight. And which is important because where this particular sensor is located is going to be right where moisture and rain, if you get caught in a rainstorm and you splash through a puddle, it's going to splash up in the area of that drive belt and of that sensor. So we kind of want that weather pack to be correctly installed. So while I'm thinking about it, let me see if I can get a close-up picture of this that I can add to the video. Maybe I'll help you guys get another camera going. I don't have nearly enough cameras, do I? I got one here and one over here, and they're everywhere. I still don't know how to work half of them. All right, let's see if we can. Boy, that's just blurry. Whatever. Anyway, if you guys see it in the video, that means it worked. So, the first thing we want to do before we connect this to it is we want to take that weather seal. We'll go with one that contrasts a little bit of the black so you can see it better. How about the red? All right, let's go with the red. I'm going to twist the conductors up a little bit so that way I don't have any frayed strands sticking out in any direction. And we're going to slide this down, and we're going to slide it down in such a way that the wide 3-ring portion is towards the wire, and the narrow part is going to go where we just see the red insulation peeking out. And that's all we need right there. And then we can take our terminal, and the wider portion here that crimps to the insulation is going to crimp onto that white silicone thing, and then the conductor portion is going to lay right in there with the small little teeth. Now, I don't have the right crimping tool for this type of connector. There is a crimping tool that does a really nice crimping job. Like you see on this one here, it folds them over and folds them in so they dig into the wires nicely and they don't come loose. I use my regular tool that has a couple of small jaws there. This is really made for the butt type connectors. But I maneuver it in such a way that I can get both sides to fold in. So I'm going to, hopefully you guys can see all this, fold these sides in little at a time until they surround the wires completely. And there's like 3 of these little fingers on each side. And again, if you've got the right tool, you just crimp it. You're done. I don't, so I got to kind of work them. And once I get them to completely surround the cables, then I can put it in one of the other parts of the tool that's designed for butt splice connectors and crimp it the rest of the way, like this. Okay. So again, the right tools make all the difference. But you can get by if you're clever, if you work with a different tool. Now I'm going to do the same thing for this portion of it that goes around the silicone seal. Again, I'm going to bend these ears so that they surround it. And then, it doesn't always work out real good, but if we can get it to wrap around it like so, now it holds that seal in place, holds to the insulation, our conductor's connected, and I would beat that on the other 2 sides if I had 2 more of these terminals left, which I don't. I got the seals, I don't know why I'm... Typically when you buy a kit with these in it, they don't send you 3 terminals and 3 weather seals, they send you 4. Which I thought was a really, really good deal because if you happen to mess one up, you've got a backup. And so I had a couple of spares. I probably used them on some other repair at some point, probably when I did the hand controls on the Excelsior Henderson. Anyway, once you've completed all 3 of these, then they go into the hard shell connector. Make sure you get them in the correct sequence. So I have at my disposal one of the original sensors here that I can use as a reference. Okay, so connector, so you'll see the connectors are the same. So my red would be the one on the far right when it's facing this way. See the lock tab upward. So my red one is going to go on this side. Okay, when you go to put these in, the way that they get locked in is there's a little kind of spring-loaded tab that sticks up. Don't know if you guys can see that or not. That little spring-loaded tab, this camera's really not helping much, but it's going to lock into the plastic, and it's going to lock in where you see that tiny little notch. So the notch is the top, and that notch should be at the top. So we would slide it in to the back, the weather seal goes in, and make sure it bottoms all the way in. Make sure it's in all the way. Give it a little tug. Make sure it's locked in, and now that terminal is fully locked into place. Once you've inserted all 3, then you would go ahead and put this retainer on, and that keeps those weather seals from coming out. And again, if I had all 3 in place, they would be the same. But you see there's an ear right there and a slot right there on both sides. And it doesn't matter if you do it this way or this way. I mean, there's no left, right, up or down on that particular part. And again, if all 3 of these were connected, then this would be complete. When you plug this in, the wires themselves are sealed at this point, and the connection between them, which would be in here, is sealed by this. So moisture can't get inside. These are really, really effective at keeping moisture out. So there it is, guys. That's how you would make your own conductor. I've got the parts ordered. This is going to stay partially assembled. When the kit comes in, I'll have more of these, and you could try to reuse these. I have not been real successful in getting that little crimped area open to get the strands out and reuse it. Some of the larger connectors I've been successful at that, but this one, they're tiny. They're just little itty bitty strands. Can't. Oh well. Anyway, hopefully that helps you guys out. Not real hard to do. And, you know, here's your point of reference once again, looking at it with a clip back, red on the right, white in the middle, black on the left. Thanks for watching, guys.